Hello everybody, welcome to the show. Please hit the subscribe button and give this episode a thumbs up. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into Modern Family, one of the most celebrated sitcoms of the 21st century. A show that broke stereotypes, challenged norms, and made us laugh for over a decade. Not everything aged perfectly. Fact, one storyline that started as progressive and groundbreaking eventually turned into something fans and critics now call a walking stereotype. That we're talking about Cameron Tucker and Mitchell Pritchett, the show's iconic gay couple. Once hailed as a beacon of representation, their characters slowly became examples of everything the show originally tried to avoid. So, what went wrong? How did one of most beloved couples become a cautionary tale of representation gone wrong? Let's break it all down. This is Modern Family's gay storyline that aged badly. When Modern Family first aired in 2009, it was a massive hit. The show was modern, refreshing, and diverse, featuring 3 different types of families, all connected by love, humor, and chaos. Among them were Mitchell and Cameron, 2 gay dads raising their adopted daughter, Lily. For many viewers, it was revolutionary. Mainstream American TV rarely showed same-sex couples in family sitcoms, especially ones living ordinary suburban lives. No trauma plots. No tragedy. Just 2 loving parents trying to raise their kid. The pilot episode, ending with Cam holding Lily up like Simba in The Lion King, was both emotional and groundbreaking. Audiences were touched. Critics praised it. The show even won multiple Emmys. But as seasons went by, things began to shift. At first, Cam and Mitch were written with depth. Mitch was the uptight lawyer struggling to open up emotionally. Cam was flamboyant, theatrical, but full of heart. Their chemistry worked because they balanced each other out. Cam's humor softened Mitch's seriousness, and Mitch's logic grounded Cam's chaos. But as the show gained popularity, the writers leaned harder into the funny gay couple trope. Cam became louder, more dramatic, almost a parody of himself. Mitch became whiny, neurotic, and overly judgmental. Instead of exploring their growth as parents and partners, many episodes turned them into comic relief. Their storylines often centered around jealousy, insecurity, or petty arguments, rarely evolving beyond cliches. Fans began to notice. What once felt authentic started feeling forced. Representation matters, but it's not just about having visibility. About how that visibility is portrayed. Cam and Mitch, despite being pioneers in sitcom history, often embodied exaggerated traits of gay men, flamboyance, vanity, melodrama, without much emotional grounding. Cam's entire identity became being dramatic. Mitch became being uptight and embarrassed by Cam. Their relationship stopped feeling like a real marriage and started looking like a constant punchline. Even their affection was toned down compared to straight couples on the same show. While Claire and Phil could kiss and flirt openly, Cam and Mitch's intimacy was often avoided, even criticized by some fans who noticed the double standard. Interestingly, Eric Stonestrait, who played Cam, is straight in real life, and while he played the role with heart and respect, some viewers felt his performance relied too heavily on stereotypes. Jesse Tyler Ferguson, who played Mitch and is openly gay, once mentioned in interviews that he and Eric would often suggest scenes where their relationship could feel more natural. But the writers preferred the funny, awkward gay dynamic. That the writers were malicious. It's that sitcoms often chase easy laughs. And unfortunately, stereotypes are easy laughs, but over time, this approach dated the show. What was once progressive became a reminder of how early representation sometimes lacked nuance. When the show ended in 2020, fan discussions on Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube blew up. People began revisiting old episodes with a more modern lens. Many fans said things like love Cam and Mitch as a kid, but now it feels like the writers turned them into caricatures. They were never allowed to just be normal, always the funny gays. Still, others defended them, saying they opened doors for representation and helped normalize same-sex families on mainstream, and that's true. Without Cam and Mitch, shows like Schitt's Creek, Heartstopper, or Modern Love might not have found the same acceptance. So even if their storyline aged badly in parts, the impact remains undeniable. Schitt's Creek, David and Patrick's romance was treated as completely normal, full of tenderness, vulnerability, and humor without ridicule. In Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Captain Holt was gay, but his personality wasn't defined by it. It was just one layer of who he was. Modern Family, on the other hand, leaned into comedy built around identity rather than comedy built around character. And that's why it doesn't hold up as gracefully. When a show's humor depends on stereotypes, it freezes that representation in time. And as culture evolves, it starts to feel outdated. One major criticism fans had was the double standard of affection. Phil and Claire had entire scenes of romantic tension and open kisses. Jay and Gloria had fiery chemistry. But Cam and Mitch, even a simple kiss became controversial. Remember the season 2 uproar where fans demanded a kissing scene? It took public pressure for the writers to include one, and it was treated as a big moment when it should have been normal. That says a lot about where TV was in the early 2010s, progressive in visibility, but still cautious in comfort. To be fair, the final seasons did give Cam and Mitch some redemption. We saw them move forward as parents, adopt another child, and even relocate to Missouri for a new life adventure. Their last scene, emotional, hopeful, and filled with love, reminded viewers why we fell in love with them in the first place. Cam and Mitch's storyline teaches us an important lesson about representation. It's not enough to include diverse characters. We need to evolve them. Early representation often carries stereotypes because society itself is still learning. But the goal should always be to move from visibility to authenticity. As the show's seasons progressed, the cracks in the portrayal of Cam and Mitchell became more visible. What once felt refreshing started to look formulaic, as if the writers had discovered a comfort zone and refused to leave it. Cam's over-the-top personality, initially a source of joy and warmth, slowly became a caricature. The sparkle that made him unique turned into a performance that felt exaggerated to the point of predictability. Every time a situation arose, you could almost predict Cam's reaction. A theatrical outburst, dramatic body language, and a punchline that reduced his character to comic relief rather than emotional depth. Mitchell, on the other hand, became increasingly defined by his insecurities and constant need to appear proper. His neurotic energy, which initially made him relatable, evolved into a one-dimensional trait. Instead of growing through his experiences as a father, partner, and son, he was repeatedly shown as the grumpy foil to Cam's chaos. Their relationship dynamics, rather than evolving into a realistic portrayal of a married couple learning and adapting, became a repetitive cycle of bickering, miscommunication, and reconciliation. What's missing there is growth, the sense that they were learning something new about themselves or each other. This stagnation didn't go unnoticed. Critics started pointing out that Modern Family, a show that had once been praised for reinventing the family sitcom, was slowly falling back into conventional storytelling. By season 6, discussions about the show on forums and fan pages often revolved around how tired Cam and Mitch storylines felt. People wanted more, deeper conversations, more complex arcs, and moments that showed the authenticity behind the laughter. But the show rarely delivered that. Instead, it kept falling back on what worked before, ignoring the evolving expectations of the audience. This wasn't just about entertainment, it reflected a cultural shift. When Modern Family premiered in 2009, the very presence of a gay couple on network television was groundbreaking. But by the mid-2010s, audiences had matured. Representation was no longer about being there, it was about being real. Viewers wanted nuanced depictions, relationships that reflected their own experiences, not watered-down versions made palatable for mainstream audiences. Shows like Looking, Please Like Me, and Schitt's Creek began offering more layered portrayals of queer lives. Against that backdrop, Modern Family started to feel outdated. What made this decline more frustrating was the potential that Cam and Mitchell had. Their chemistry was undeniable, their banter charming, and their emotional moments genuinely touching when handled well. There were episodes where you could glimpse the brilliance that the writers were capable of, moments of tenderness, vulnerability, and honesty that broke through the comedy. For instance, when Mitch's fear of being judged collided with Cam's need for openness, the show briefly explored how internalized shame and societal pressure shape queer relationships. But instead of developing that thread, those emotional beats were usually brushed aside for quick laughs. It's important to note that Modern Family was a network sitcom, and that comes with its own limitations. Network TV, especially in the 2010s, operated under strict content guidelines and audience expectations. Writers often had to balance representation with what executives considered family-friendly. So, even though Cam and Mitch were central characters, the writers couldn't fully explore their intimacy the way they did with Phil and Claire or Jay and Gloria. This lack of equality in romantic expression was glaring. It subtly reinforced the message that same-sex love was acceptable as long as it stayed within safe comedic boundaries. Over time, this imbalance created discomfort. Fans began to ask, why did Cam and Mitch's affection always feel muted? Why were their storylines more about comic mishaps than genuine romance? Even their wedding episode, which should have been a major cultural celebration, was framed with more chaos and slapstick than heartfelt exploration. While it had emotional moments, the focus drifted too quickly back to humor. In contrast, the weddings of straight couples in the series were given more time to breathe emotionally. It was as if the show couldn't decide whether to treat Cam and Mitch as real people or as comic instruments. Another problem was the lack of consistent character development. Mitch and Cam were shown as capable, intelligent, and loving, yet their conflicts often revolved around trivial misunderstandings. Their growth as parents, especially to Lily, was underexplored. Lily herself, a character who could have added new dimensions to their story, was mostly used for punchlines or sarcasm. We never really saw how being same-sex parents in a changing America impacted them or their daughter. That missing emotional layer is what separates great representation from average sitcom writing. Let's not forget, Modern Family had moments of brilliance. The show's early seasons humanized queer parenthood at a time when many viewers still carried biases. It portrayed a gay couple dealing with in-laws, adoption, career struggles, and everyday life. These were important steps in normalizing LGBTQ+ representation. The problem isn't that Cam and Mitch existed. It's that the show didn't let them evolve with the world that was changing around them. By the late 2010s, culture had moved ahead. Audiences had seen richer, more layered queer stories that didn't rely on stereotypes for humor. When people rewatched Modern Family, what once felt funny now felt forced. The same exaggerated gestures and personality quirks that once drew laughs started feeling dated. Even fans who loved the characters began admitting that they hadn't aged well. The social media era amplified these discussions. Edits, YouTube essays, and Reddit threads all dissected how the show's humor aged in hindsight. And yet, the conversation isn't purely negative. Many viewers still credit Modern Family for being one of the first shows where they saw themselves represented, even imperfectly. For some, Cam and Mitch were the first gay couple they could show their parents without discomfort. They were accessible, mainstream, and part of America's living rooms. That visibility mattered. Even if the writing was flawed, it helped normalize same-sex relationships in popular culture. Opened doors for shows to take bigger creative risks later. Eric Stonestreet and Jesse Tyler Ferguson also played a huge part in shaping how these characters were received. Their chemistry felt real because their off-screen friendship brought warmth to their on-screen relationship. In interviews, Jesse often spoke about how proud he was to be part of something that changed public perception. He also mentioned how he and Eric had to navigate playing characters that sometimes leaned too heavily into cliches. They were aware of the balance between humor and representation. They just didn't always have full creative control over how that balance was portrayed. Cameron's flamboyance was not inherently problematic. Flamboyant people exist, and they deserve representation too. The problem arose when that trait became his entire identity. Similarly, Mitchell's anxiety and conservatism could have been explored as reflections of internalized homophobia and societal expectations, but the show rarely went that deep. Instead, these traits were mined for laughs, stripping away opportunities for character growth. Let's talk about how time exposed these issues even more. When the show started, mainstream audiences weren't used to seeing gay couples in comedy without tragedy. But as the years passed and more diverse storytelling emerged, Modern Family's portrayal started feeling like an artifact from a transitional era, one that was trying, but not yet succeeding at full authenticity. It's similar to how early interracial couples on TV were groundbreaking for their time but later criticized for lacking depth. Representation evolves, and what was once revolutionary can later look like a first step, not a finish line. Interestingly, Modern Family's writing team often defended their approach by saying the show was about universal family dynamics, not politics or identity. And that's true to an extent. But when a show claims to represent modern diversity, it automatically carries responsibility. You can't be modern without being self-aware. The writers seem more interested in keeping the tone light than in deepening the emotional realities of queer life. And that's where the show missed an opportunity, not through malice, but through complacency. What's beautiful, though, is that the ending gave us closure. The finale sent Cam and Mitch off to Missouri with a new baby, starting a new chapter in their lives. Wasn't a perfect send-off, but it symbolized hope and continuity. Fans felt emotional seeing them finally move forward together. T was a reminder that despite the stereotypes, there was still love, real, visible, enduring love, at the heart of their story. That's why, even with all its flaws, their legacy endures. Culturally, Modern Family stands as a turning point that taught television executives that queer families could anchor a mainstream sitcom, showed advertisers that audiences would embrace diversity, and it taught future writers what not to do, that representation isn't just about inclusion, it's about evolution. Without Modern Family, shows like Heartstopper, Young Royals, and Ted Lasso might not have been possible in their current form. Looking back now, it's easy to criticize. But we also need to acknowledge that progress is always messy. Every era of TV representation has its limitations, and every step forward paves the way for better storytelling. Cam and Mitch may not have aged perfectly, but they walked so others could run. They were both symbols of progress and reflections of their time, a snapshot of how far we'd come and how far we still had to go. So when we rewatch Modern Family today, maybe the best way to see it is not as a flawless portrayal, but as a milestone in a much larger journey. A moment in television history that captured both the triumph and the imperfection of progress. Because representation doesn't have to be perfect to matter, it just has to start the conversation. And in that sense, Cam and Mitchell didn't just make us laugh. They made us think, and they changed the cultural landscape in ways even the writers might not have imagined. Modern Family utilizes the mockumentary sitcom style popularized in the 2000s by shows like The Office and Parks and Recreation. The critically acclaimed show followed the lives of a large, blended family, attracting high praise from critics and fans alike. The show won numerous accolades, including a whopping 22 Emmys, and ran for 11 seasons from 2009 to 2020, ending its reign as one of the longest-airing sitcoms. Fans have watched the extended Pritchett Delgado Dunphy-Tucker clan grow, both as the fictional family gains members and as the show's cast ages. Before all those changes, fans might wonder, how old were the actors when they stepped into their roles? The show's producers took great care in casting the family members, and on the whole, most of the actors' ages match their characters closely. Still, there are a few that may surprise unsuspecting viewers. Directors Gail Mancuso, Stephen Levitan, Beth McArthur-Miller, Jason Weiner, Michael Spiller, James Allen Hens, Fred Savage, Chris Koch, Jeffrey Walker, Ryan Case, Randall Einhorn, Eric Dean Seaton, Scott Ellis, Bryan Cranston, John Ridgey, Julie Bowen, Ken Whittingham, Reginald Hudlin, Iwona Sapienza, Elaine K.O., Helena Lamb, Adam Shankman, Claire Scanlon, Dean Parasot. Writers Becky Mann, Audra Sealeff, Bill Rubel, Stephen Lloyd, John Pollock, Vali Chandrasekharan, Ben Carlin, Jack Burdett, Chuck Tatum, Andy Gordon, Christy Stratton, Cindy Chupak, Ilana Wernick, Kenny Schwartz, Rick Weiner, Joe Lawson, Jessica Potter, Carol Leifer, Emily Spivey, Jerry Collins, Dave Weasel. The family's patriarch is the often cranky and secretly sentimental Jay Pritchett. The show follows him and his new wife, the spirited Colombian stay-at-home turned realtor Gloria, who brings with her a son from her previous marriage. Their marriage might seem odd at first sight, but there's a true and quite passionate love at the center of their relationship. The Modern Family fourth season episode, Bringing Up Baby. Jay finds that Gloria is pregnant on his 65th birthday. Running the numbers, it's clear Jay was 61 at the start of the series. Pritchett is played by Ed O'Neill, who rose to fame with his leading role in the subversive 90s sitcom Married, with Children. O'Neill was 63 when Modern Family began, making him only a tad older than his child. Playing opposite O'Neill is Colombian actress Sofia Vergara, who earned critical and audience acclaim for her role as the feisty Gloria Delgado-Pritchett. Gloria begins the series as an outsider, having recently married Jay and sharing a tense dynamic with his daughter, Claire, who considers her a gold digger. Gloria soon grows to be an integral part of the family, developing close bonds with everyone. During the season 4 episode, New Year's Eve, Jay drags the family to a hotel he says he last visited in 1974, prompting Gloria's response that she was only 2. Gloria was likely born sometime in 1972, the same as Vergara. Thus, both Gloria and Sofia Vergara were 37 when Modern Family began. Manny Delgado, Gloria's child from her first marriage, serves as the family's consummate sophisticate. As Gloria's partner in crime before her marriage to Jay, Manny is exceptionally mature for his age, to the point where he drinks coffee and has extensive knowledge about literature, cooking, and even alcohol. His overly grown-up attitude often confuses and concerns Jay, who encourages him to act more his age. Manny is played by child actor Rico Rodriguez, who was 11 when he began the role, the exact age of his character. In one episode, Manny's birthday is stated to be in January, whereas Rodriguez's is in July, meaning Manny is slightly older than Rico. Two-time Emmy winner Julie Bowen plays Claire Dunphy, Jay's oldest child, Phil's wife, and the mother of Haley, Alex, and Luke. Claire is the apple of her father's eye and takes firmly after him, acting very much like a type A personality. While she is driven and expects a lot from those in her life, she gives her all to the people she loves. Bowen was 39 when the first season of Modern Family aired. In the show, Claire was around the same age, likely born in 1970. The same year Bowen was born is mentioned that Claire is 14 months older than her stepmother, Gloria, which is only a few months less than the actual age difference between Bowen and Vergara. Bowen might not be similar to her character, but the two at least have their ages in common. Ty Burrell joined the cast for the sitcom's first season as Phil Dunphy, who is the epitome of all dorky, dedicated dads and one of Modern Family's most likable characters. Phil acts as the good cop to Claire's bad cop, always laid back to balance her intensity. Critics and audiences lauded Burrell's performance, and he won 2 Emmy Awards from 8 consecutive nominations, the most out of any actor on the show. At 42, Burrell joined Modern Family. When Phil and Claire eloped, Phil was in his mid-20s. He was born on April 3rd, though his exact birth year is not given. However, Phil is a few years older than Claire, so Burrell's real-life age is likely quite close to his characters. He might be 40 or 41 in the first season, but everyone knows his mind is much younger. Ailey is Phil and Claire's oldest daughter, a beautiful party girl with little to no ambition other than being popular and looking her best. She undergoes a significant change throughout the show, becoming more mature and welcoming twins in season 10 with her high school sweetheart, Dylan. Sarah Hyland was 19 when she began her role as Haley on Modern Family. However, her character was only 16 in the first season and later celebrated her 21st birthday in season 6, making the age gap between her and her character one of the most significant in the series. Hyland's acting chops and petite stature serve her well, though most fans would never.